Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles. This is NET25 World News. Here are tonight's top stories. President Biden is in Michigan, a crucial battleground state, striving to regain campaign momentum following a well-received press conference that drew 24 million viewers. Despite this, internal party concerns about his leadership continue to create divisions. Tensions between NATO and Russia are escalating, raising fears of a new Cold War or direct confrontation. Following the NATO summit in Washington, the U.S. announced the deployment of missiles to Germany aimed at enhancing defense capabilities. While the West views this as a move for peace, Russia perceives it as a direct threat. The Philippines vows to stand firm in its dispute with Beijing over the South China Sea, asserting its position 8 years after an international ruling favored the Philippines in the territorial dispute. 2 years ago, NASA's James Webb Telescope revolutionized our understanding of the cosmos with its $10 billion groundbreaking deep field images revealing numerous previously unseen galaxies. Now, to mark this anniversary, JWST has captured new images featuring two interacting galaxies nicknamed the Penguin and the Egg. President Biden is currently in Michigan, a key battleground state, as he works to regain momentum for his re-election campaign. Following a strong showing at last night's press conference, which attracted 24 million viewers, Biden is now energizing supporters in Detroit.
I'm the nominee of the Democratic Party, the only Democrat or Republican who has beaten Donald Trump ever. And I'm going to beat him again. I know him. Donald Trump is a loser. I'm the nominee. I'm the nominee of this party because 14 million Democrats like you voted for me in the primaries. You made me the nominee, no one else, not the press, not the pundits, not the insiders, not donors. You, the voters, you decided, no one else, and I'm not going anywhere. No, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying. You may have noticed that since the debate, the press and their good guys and women up there, they've been hammering me. I make a lot of mistakes. No, it's okay. They've been hammering me because I sometimes confuse names. I say that's Charlie instead of Bill. But guess what? Donald Trump has gotten a free pass. He hadn't done a damn thing till a couple days ago. He'd been riding around in his golf cart in his course, filling out his scorecard before he picks up his club.
However, internal party concerns about his leadership capability continue to cause fractures. In Detroit, where Biden is attempting to consolidate party support and reassure voters about his readiness to serve another term, he said this.
Folks, you probably noticed there's been a lot of speculation lately. What's Joe Biden going to do? Is he going to stay in the race? Is he going to drop out? Here's my answer. I am running, and we're going to win. I'm not going to change that.
Despite this, since his heavily scrutinized press conference, 5 more congressional Democrats have urged him to step down. Connecticut Congressman Jim Hice voiced worries about Biden's ability to manage national security. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries met privately with Biden last night to discuss these concerns, describing the meeting as a frank conversation about the way forward. To prevent further defections, Biden also held virtual meetings with several House Democrat groups today. And in one session, California Representative Mike Levin directly told the president it was time for new leadership.
First, let me say that President Biden has been an outstanding leader, not only of our nation, but of the entire free world. Making the statement is not easy. I have deep respect for President Biden's 5+ decades of public service and incredible appreciation for the work we've done together these last 3.5 years. But I believe the time has come for President Biden to pass the torch. We must prevail against the incalculable threat Donald Trump poses to the American institutions of freedom and democracy.
Many voters in Michigan, a must-win state for Biden, echo this sentiment.
I voted Democratic for president for 50 years, but I can't vote for Joe Biden. I'm not voting for Trump, but he lost me as a Biden voter. It would be reckless. When I saw him in the debate, he looked lost. And
Biden is also highlighting concerns about Trump's association with Project 2025, an initiative from the Conservative Heritage Foundation.
But Trump is even more dangerous now. No, I'm serious. He's unhinged. He snapped. And he refuses this time around. He refuses this time around to say he'll accept the the results. Can you imagine that? Look, he says if he loses, there will be a bloodbath when he loses. And the United States Supreme Court said there is virtually no limit on the power of a president. Trump said if he wins, he'll be a dictator on day one. He means it, folks. We're not going to let that happen. Over my dead body will happen.
And he plans to continue this engagement in Michigan tonight and next week in Texas and Nevada. Meanwhile, Donald Trump repeatedly criticized President Joe Biden during an extensive speech at a rally held at his Miami Golf Club, addressing thousands of enthusiastic supporters in South Florida.
But they're lying in the entire world of Joe Biden's condition. I mean, you see his condition. You see them frantically trying to overturn the results of 50 state primaries and install a new candidate at the behest of their very rich donors. Florida is going to defeat the radical left Democrat hoaxers and liars, and the election day, we are going to tell crooked Joe Biden, Joe, you've done a horrible job. You're fired. Get out, Joe. You're fired.
A U.S.-based political expert praised President Joe Biden's performance at this week's NATO summit in Washington, D.C., despite a series of verbal gaffes. Take a look.
So yes, he did misspeak a few times. But overall, I think that I think he did really a good job. And I say that as somebody who was also concerned, and I have been concerned about his age, but also, frankly, the age of former President Trump. And I think it's also important to put in context the fact that Trump has also misspoken many times, and he's also 78 years old. And so I think that, we have to kind of step back and look at this bigger picture. I mean, here in the United States, I think viewers are focusing very much on the upcoming election in November, whereas viewers in Europe, for example, and certainly Ukrainians are focused on other things, and they're more concerned. Clearly, Ukrainians are more concerned about the ongoing attacks, which are happening, that are targeting the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, not just the areas where there have been fighting in the east or in the south, but the capital is coming under assault again. And I think that's really very worrying. So, of course, he has misspoken, previously, as many people do who speak publicly. As I mentioned, Trump himself has often misspoken or not pronounced words correctly, in addition to telling numerous lies, as we know. I mean, there have been fact checks that have been done of Trump in the past, and there's no comparison in terms of the factual content of what Biden is saying compared to what Trump is saying. And so, yes, I think it's important to focus on both of their mental abilities and their age. But more importantly, we should focus on the factual content of what they're actually saying.
And another U.S.-based political analyst expressed doubts about President Joe Biden's ability to address concerns regarding his viability, age, and capacity, especially after a series of verbal gaffes at the NATO summit drew harsh attention to his fitness for office.
His press conference, which really capped the NATO summit, generally speaking, he was quite fluid and did extremely well. The problem is that I'm not sure that he can quiet this drumbeat about his viability, about his age and capacity at this point, no matter what he does. And because presidents make gaffes all the time, they say things that they don't mean to say. But because of Biden's debate performance and these growing, and then what the polls show about him losing to Trump, and growing doubts among leading Democrats that he can win and defeat Trump, every flub is magnified tenfold. And at the same time that he was really having this triumph, this international triumph, it was foreign policy, it's really in his wheelhouse, this great achievement, questions about the viability of his candidacy persisted, and in some respects just became a steadier drum. Seems to be we're kind of stuck, right, as a country, and people who identify as Democrats are stuck in this no man's land where he's not getting out. He's trying to quiet concerns about his age, and every day it's a new story, a new headline about donors pulling out money, people calling on him to step aside, questions about his mental acuity. And so it's become a structural problem, I think, for his campaign. So in that sense, it's Biden's decision. And it is up to him. He's won the primary. He's not the official nominee. He's a presumptive nominee. But there's no realistic path for a majority of Democratic delegates to decide on their own, I don't think, that they can defy the will of the voters and support a different nominee. I don't see that happening. So it's really his decision, right, and his family's decision. And Harris has been effective on the campaign trail recently. She has, I think, been a much more effective messenger for the campaign than Biden has, at least in recent weeks and arguably months. But it's very hard to game out any scenario and predict the future, but it's especially hard because this would be so unprecedented.
Are we hurtling towards a new Cold War, or worse, a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia? Now, this unnerving question hangs heavy as tensions escalate between the two superpowers. The recent NATO summit in Washington served as a flashpoint. Leaders discussed critical issues, including Ukraine's potential membership, China's growing influence, and of course, Russia. The U.S. then made a game-changing announcement, the deployment of powerful missiles to Germany, significantly boosting their defense capabilities.
The United States decided to deploy the precision strike capabilities in Germany, which I think is a very good decision, and it fits into all the decisions we already took. It is something of deterrence, so it's securing peace, and it is a necessary and important decision at the right time.
The West hails this as a move for peace. However, Russia sees it as a direct threat, vowing retaliation. And this mirrors the Cold War era, when similar missile deployments by both sides brought Europe to the brink of nuclear confrontation. History casts a long shadow. The 1987 INF Treaty aimed to prevent such a scenario, but its collapse in 2019 due to accusations and counter-accusations reignited anxieties. Turkey urging caution, but Moscow is resolute. President Putin has ordered the production of short-range nuclear missiles, a chilling sign of a potential arms race.
Мы с вами сегодня рассмотрим вопрос о дальнейших шагах Российской Федерации в отношении одностороннего моратория на развертывание ракет средней и меньшей дальности наземного базирования. Как известно, несколько лет назад Соединенные Штаты под надуманным предлогом вышли из этого договора и объявили о том, что они будут такие ракетные системы производить.
The world watches with bated breath. Will this escalating war of words translate into actual conflict, or can a diplomatic solution be found? This is a story with the potential to rewrite the course of history, demanding our undivided attention. On the heels of increased German support for Ukraine's war effort, tensions rose today with an explosive allegation. U.S. and Western intelligence sources claim Russia plotted to assassinate Armin Paperger, CEO of Rheinmetall, a major German arms manufacturer supplying weapons to Ukraine. Now, the Kremlin swiftly denied the reports, with spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissing them as fake and lacking any credible evidence. However, German weekly Spiegel reports intelligence agencies identified potential suspects, some possibly Russian, who may have been scouting Paperger's location. While Germany condemned Russia's hybrid war of aggression, they declined to directly address the assassination plot. Rheinmetall understandably remains silent on security matters, and this allegation adds another layer of complexity to the already tense situation. China announced joint military exercises with Russia along its southern coast following a meeting of the U.S.-led NATO alliance and warnings from Japan about Beijing's growing ties with Moscow. China dismissed these warnings as irresponsible and provocative. The drills, called Joint Sea 2024, began in early July and will continue until mid-month. They aim to showcase China and Russia's ability to tackle maritime security threats and maintain regional stability, according to China's defense ministry. This announcement coincides with a week where NATO leaders reaffirmed support for Ukraine against Russia's invasion. China and Russia, both critical of NATO, have strengthened their partnership in recent years. NATO leaders called China a decisive enabler of Russia's actions in Ukraine.
We agree that China cannot continue to fuel the largest military conflict in Europe without this impacting Beijing's interests and reputation. Other authoritarian states, such as Iran and North Korea, are also supporting Russia's war with drones, ammunition, and more.
Right now, Russia is on a wartime footing with regard to defense production. They're significantly ramping up their production of weapons, munitions, and vehicles. And they're doing it with the help of China,
prompting China to accuse them of Cold War mentality.
在乌克兰问题上，北约鼓吹中国责任毫无道理，用心险恶。
China insists it is neutral in the conflict, though it faces criticism for supporting Russia economically and politically. These drills come alongside separate China-Belarus exercises near NATO's eastern border. Japan expressed serious concerns about the China-Russia activities near its territory, citing national security risks. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with the leadership of Solomon Islands and Vanuatu in Beijing, reaffirming China's commitment to a strengthened relationship with these South Pacific nations. China's foreign ministry reported that President Xi pledged China's support for their development through initiatives in rural areas and infrastructure.
总理先生上任不久就应邀对中国进行政治访问，体现了你对中所关系的重视。总理先生是中所关系建立和发展的亲历者、推动者、贡献者。
Xi emphasized China's policy of non-interference and avoiding geopolitical influence, potentially contrasting with some perceptions of increased U.S. involvement in the region. However, China's recent actions tell a different story. Beijing has been ramping up financial aid and security cooperation with Pacific nations, and this push is seen as part of a broader strategy to expand China's influence, particularly ahead of the upcoming Pacific Island Summit in Japan. Leaders from 18 countries, including Solomon Islands and Vanuatu, are expected to attend.
Solomon Islands values its comprehensive and strategic relations with China. And I wish to reaffirm our respect for the One China principle.
The Pentagon reported that the U.S. has faced challenges in re-anchoring its temporary aid pier on the Gaza coast, marking the third time it has detached due to weather conditions. Initially anchored in mid-May, the pier has been operational for a total of 20 days, according to a Pentagon spokeswoman.
On Wednesday, U.S. Central Command personnel attempted to re-anchor the temporary pier to the beach in Gaza to resume humanitarian operations. However, due to technical and weather-related issues, CENTCOM personnel were unable to re-anchor the pier to the shore. The pier, support vessels, and equipment returned to Ashdod and will remain there for now. A re-anchoring date has not yet been set at this time.
President Joe Biden expressed disappointment over the ongoing issues within the $230 million military pier, which officials anticipate will soon be permanently out of service. The project has encountered repeated detachment due to adverse weather conditions since its installation.
Well, I think it's important to remember that we always said this was a temporary operation. It was always going to have an end date. That exact end date, I don't have for you right now, but we'll keep you updated on that.
Moreover, offshore conditions have further complicated the distribution of assistance. Secretary General Antonio Guterres pleaded for donors to fund the embattled UN agency for Palestinian refugees, warning there was no alternative despite Israeli criticism of the body.
In impossible conditions and in the midst of their own grief, the women and men of UNRWA have bravely continued their work in whatever way they can. They are the backbone of humanitarian operations in Gaza. And can you imagine what it must be like to be in this situation? Can you imagine how our colleagues wake up day after day in a living nightmare and still deliver for Palestinians in desperate need? Because I cannot.
Philippe Lazzarini, the chief of UNRWA, said the agency will be unable to function beyond August without receiving more funding. The UN emergency appeal for $1.2 billion for the Palestinians by the end of the year, along with an appeal for neighboring countries, has received less than 20% of the funding it needs, according to Lazzarini.
The agency exists today because a political solution does not. It exists in lieu of a state that can deliver critical public services. If the international community commits to a political solution, UNRWA can resume its intended role supporting a time-bound transition, delivering education, primary health, and social support.
Israel, long critical of UNRWA, alleged in January that a number of the agency's employees participated in the October 7 attack by Hamas. Israel has since ramped up pressure on UNRWA, which fired the employees and promised to investigate. According to Guterres, 195 UNRWA staff members have been killed in the war, the highest death toll for staff in UN history. The U.S. Congress has barred further funding for UNRWA. President Joe Biden's administration has instead directed funding for Palestinian civilians to other bodies, while saying that UNRWA is uniquely equipped to distribute aid. Houston residents facing a brutal double threat: sweltering heat and widespread power outages in the wake of Hurricane Beryl. With temperatures soaring, locals like Josh Vance are struggling without air conditioning.
Right, dealing with the heat at home, it's terrible. Honestly, we're suffering, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a man. I can take it. Now, I don't say this to my kids. I'm like, man, it could be worse. You guys were blessed. I'm trying to keep their spirits up. But I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna tell you straight up, man to man, we're dying, man. We're suffering, man. This heat is murdering us, bro. It's killing us, dude. It's sucking the life and soul out of my body as we speak. And
While the oil and gas industry escaped major damage, Beryl's fury flooded streets, uprooted trees, and crippled power lines. The storm's toll included 7 deaths across Texas and 2 million power outages, with half of Houston still in the dark as of Friday, according to poweroutage.us, as crews scramble to restore power power, hundreds line up at cooling centers or wait in their cars for essentials like ice, water, and food. Unlike most of the country with interconnected grids, Texas operates its own independent system, raising questions about its resilience in the face of such disasters.
At 3:30, President tweets, "I've spoken to Mayor Whitmire, Judge Hidalgo, and spoken earlier with Lieutenant Governor and FEMA regarding devastating impacts on the Hurricane Borough of Texas. While speaking with the Lieutenant Governor, I immediately approved a major disaster declaration."
Process works. In your packet, you have 44 CFR, that's Code of Federal Regulations, Section 206, that FEMA wrote to discuss how states are supposed to follow the law. There's one person on the planet that can override that law and grant a declaration outside of the law, and that's the President of the United States. There has been some reporting that this was a slow ask, and I will tell you that's a lie. This was not a slow ask. This was a timely ask following the law. And in fact, I would argue that Governor Patrick's ask of Biden to get this declaration may have sped it up had he not ended it on the exact same day.
As Houston battles the heat and darkness, tragedy strikes elsewhere. Drone footage captured the devastation in Nova Scotia, Canada, where flash floods triggered by Hurricane Beryl's remnants have collapsed the West Halls Harbor Road Bridge. And this disaster comes on top of another heartbreaking loss. A young person playing in a park with friends was swept away by floodwaters on Thursday. Despite a search involving the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, local fire department, and search and rescue teams, the youth's body was found later that night. The storm dumped over 100 millimeters of rain in just a few hours, overwhelming drainage systems and leading to emergency warnings for flash floods. Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston expressed his condolences to the victims' family. Hurricane Beryl's impact stretches far beyond Houston, leaving a trail of destruction and heartbreak in its wake. In a surprising turn of events, a judge in New Mexico has dismissed the manslaughter case against actor Alec Baldwin, stemming from the 2021 on-set shooting on the film Rust.
Discovery violations inject needless delay into the proceedings. Courts may impose meaningful sanctions to effectuate their inherent power and promote efficient judicial administration. The state's discovery violation has injected a needless, incurable delay into the instant jury trial. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice. Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted.
Baldwin, visibly emotional, was seen hugging his legal team and wife after the judge ruled in his favor. The defense successfully argued that prosecutors mishandled crucial evidence, leading to the dismissal. On what was supposed to be the third day of witness testimony, Judge Mary Marlowe Summer dismissed the jury and instead heard arguments from attorneys, and Baldwin's defense claimed prosecutors withheld evidence, potentially exonerating Baldwin. Crime scene technician Marisa Popple testified that she cataloged bullets but was instructed not to file them under the Rust case. Special Prosecutor Carrie Morrissey, appearing flustered, maintained she was unaware of the bullets until this week. Facing a collapsing case, Morrissey surprisingly called herself as a witness. She claimed the buried bullets differed from live rounds on the set and were stored elsewhere. However, the judge remained unconvinced, citing Morrissey's presence in discussions about excluding the bullets. The defense presented new witnesses and live rounds they believe were intentionally omitted from the investigation. These bullets, also only recently discovered, were never tested against those found on set. The hearing took another dramatic turn when news emerged that Morrissey's co-counsel resigned, leaving her to defend the case alone. Jurors were expected to hear from armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, who was previously convicted of involuntary manslaughter. But Judge Summer ultimately dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning it cannot be filed or it cannot be refiled. And this ends Alec Baldwin's nearly 3-year legal battle. EU regulators accuse Elon Musk's platform X of misleading users with its new pay-for-blue check system and violating content rules. The funding announced Friday could lead to hefty fines. EU unhappiness stems from Musk's changes to the Blue Badge system, which now grants verification for a premium subscription, etc. And this clash isn't new. Musk's platform overhaul sparked friction with the EU, which seeks stronger online user protection and competition from big tech. The EU Commission informed X it's in breach of the Digital Services Act, or DSA, due to deceptive Blue Badge practices. Musk on X lashed out at the EU, accusing them of offering a secret deal to censor content in exchange for avoiding fines. The DSA is misinformation, Musk wrote. The European Commission offered X an illegal secret deal. The other platforms accepted. X did not. EU top digital official Thierry Breton refuted the claims directly on X. There has never been and will never be any secret deal, he concluded with, "Up to you, see you in court or not." And this marks the first enforcement action under the DSA following an investigation launched in December 2023. X becomes the third company in recent weeks to face EU action for regulation breaches following warnings to Apple and Meta. The EU further accuses X of failing to comply with ad transparency rules and hindering researcher access to public data. In a major setback, SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket experienced a critical malfunction during a launch yesterday, and this marks the first such failure for the reliable rocket in nearly 10 years. The issue occurred in the upper stage engine during the second burn, meant to boost the deployed satellite's orbit. Details remain unclear, but the engine may have malfunctioned or the rocket structure may have failed, causing it to break apart. And this delay poses a significant challenge for SpaceX as two key missions are approaching. One mission, scheduled for later this month, involves the first civilian spacewalk on a fully commercial flight. The other, planned for August, is a crewed mission to the International Space Station. And both rely on the Falcon 9, and resolving this issue is critical for their success. The FAA, responsible for licensing all U.S. space launches, will collaborate with SpaceX in the investigation. And until they approve the findings and any necessary fixes, SpaceX will be grounded, hindering upcoming launches. 2 years ago, NASA's James Webb Telescope, or JWST, the largest and most powerful space telescope ever built, $10 billion, stunned us with its first deep-field images revealing a multitude of never-before-seen galaxies. And these groundbreaking observations revolutionized our understanding of the cosmos. To commemorate this anniversary, Webb has captured new images showcasing two interacting galaxies nicknamed the Penguin and the Egg. Take a look.
This is ARP 142, also affectionately known as the Penguin and the Egg. In this stunning image, we witness two interacting galaxies, NGC 2936 and NGC 2937. The nickname comes from their remarkable resemblance to these objects. ARP 142 is located 326 million light-years from Earth in the constellation Hydra, about 130 times farther away than Andromeda, our nearest galactic neighbor. While our Milky Way and Andromeda are separated by about 2.5 million light-years, the Penguin and the Egg are about 100,000 light-years apart, relatively close in astronomical terms. The Penguin is somewhat larger across than the Milky Way, and the Egg is much more compact. The Penguin galaxy, originally a spiral like our Milky Way, has become significantly more distorted than the Egg, an elliptical galaxy, due to their cosmic encounter. Compared to previous images like this one from the Hubble Space Telescope, this new view from the Webb Space Telescope offers a different perspective. In this image, we see a blue haze around the Penguin. The haze is a result of the two galaxies mingling. The Penguin's tail brims with a stunning mix of distant background galaxies, gas, dust, and the glow of newly formed stars. The beak is a region rich with gas and dust. As a spiral elliptical galaxy interaction, NGC 2936 stands out because of its active star-forming regions. The beak of the penguin is the brightest starburst area. This image highlights the important role that mergers play in how galaxies evolve over time. Before their interaction, the penguin galaxy had a spiral shape. In this image, we can still see that original shape in the eye of the penguin, which was the bulge or center of the spiral galaxy. The egg is an elliptical galaxy filled with aging stars. This galaxy remains less distorted than the penguin because of its compact structure and lower amounts of gas and dust. Although this image focuses on two distinct galaxies, a third galaxy attempts to steal the show. In the top right, we can see the spiral galaxy cataloged as PGC 1237172. This galaxy was barely visible in the mid-infrared image alone, but stands out clearly in the composite image. Although the galaxy appears prominently here, it's not part of ARP 142. This foreground galaxy is much closer to us. The largest stars near the galaxy are also closer than they appear. These stars are local interlopers, stars from our own galaxy that just happen to be in the same line of sight. These interloping stars are only thousands of light years away, while the galaxy is about 230 million light years distant. These objects offer a fascinating perspective on the vastness of space. Another noticeable feature is the color differences between the near-infrared and mid-infrared views. The different colors are due to how different combinations of distance and dust show up in different wavelengths of light. Notice that if a dot has diffraction spikes, we can identify it as a star rather than a galaxy. There are more wonders present than we can see. Many regions in this image likely contain newly forming stars and exoplanets, though they are too far away to see directly. This phenomenon, common in all galaxies, is especially fascinating here because the merger has created new areas for star and planet formation. As Webb continues its observations, we can expect more groundbreaking discoveries and a deeper understanding of our universe.
As we celebrate 2 years of the James Webb Space Telescope's incredible discoveries, remember the universe is a vast and wondrous place. Stay tuned to Net25 World News to keep exploring it with us. Good night, everyone.